You're sitting at a table with your friends. It's game night and you've prepared an epic session. Not 10 minutes into the session, a peaceful encounter takes an unexpected turn. They end up in a fight and it's initiative. However, you haven't prepared for this and you need to whip up a quick and dirty battle map in a matter of seconds to get the combat started. What do? What do you draw? What should you put in that map to provide an interesting encounter without spending 20 minutes drawing out the map? Hello and welcome, my name is Fake Fairytale and this is my encounter and battle map design video. As you've probably already noticed, I tried something new in this video. It is much more scripted and organized than my other videos, and I'm thinking of keeping the Let's Build videos a bit more chill and relaxed and have these information dumps be more energized to make sure that they are more interesting to watch. Please let me know what you think of it in the comments. Also, for some of you, this video might contain common knowledge, though I believe there's plenty of newer DMs for which it isn't, and this might be of great value. If there's anything you feel I missed, please feel free to share it in the comments and, well, maybe we can add it in the description or in another video later. Now let's continue. The example I just gave is one of many situations where you could need a battle map. However, what I want to discuss in this video can also be used when you're preparing for a session and have plenty of time to make a battle map. But also when you're building a single encounter or an entire dungeon. Additionally, I'd like to add in a few very generic tips to keep combats challenging and exciting. This has mainly something to do with traps and enemy variety, but more on that later. Keep in mind that this is my truth, my way of doing things. It doesn't mean that you have to apply what I say, and it doesn't mean that doing it differently is wrong. There are many different ways to approach making a battle map and encounters, and in the end all that matters is that your players have fun. Now, having said that, creating a decent combat encounter map boils down to basically three things. 1. Elevations, 2. Objects, and 3. Space. Elevations are great and can be used in so many different ways. You can climb on them for height advantage or to stay out of reach of enemies, you can hide behind them for cover, or you can push enemies from them. In some cases, you can even destroy it, like a wooden watchtower for example, and have it crash onto the battlefield for your daily fix of mayhem. It doesn't have to be that extreme every time though. A 5 feet ridge in an hill encounter can already spice things up. I just love elevations. One time, during a combat encounter that I set up for my party, they had to fight a bunch of lizard folk in an underground hallway filled with wooden walkways. Somewhere during the fight, a giant egg hatched, spawning a large black lizard that spits acid. At the end of the fight, with 2 of the PCs already unconscious, the paladin decided to try and push the lizard off a wooden walkway, hoping it would fall to its death 30 feet below. And guess what? He succeeded. The lizard died, they cleared out the remaining lizard folk, and everybody survived to fight another day. But even if the lizard had survived, it would have spent at least a turn to get back up there, giving the paladin time to heal one of the downed teammates so that they could continue fighting. We still talk about that encounter right now, 2 years after the fact. Things that you can use to create elevations are, for example, cliffs and ridges, buildings and roofs, structures like walkways and beams, a staircase of course, or furniture. And furniture also brings me to the next point, which is objects. Some players have an excellent imagination and often proactively ask the DM, is there a candle in this room that I can use? Or is there some rubble, boxes, or anything that I can hide behind? Other players find this a bit harder to do and take the map at face value. If an object isn't drawn on the map, they often forget to ask about it entirely and work with the information that they have in front of them. Both styles are of course perfectly fine. But to help the players out, especially the second group, I try to add in at least some pieces of furniture or objects they can interact with. You don't have to draw out the entire dinner table with food and cutlery included. A bunch of tables, chairs, boxes and a pillar here and there, or just some rubble works fine. Objects on a map help players come up with creative ideas for actions they can perform, especially when attacking the enemy for whatever reason is the suboptimal choice. Another example. During a combat encounter where my party was assaulting a fort filled to the brim with goblins, the barbarian toppled over the table and used it as cover for himself and the more squishy party members. Some fierce fighting happened around that table and it was dragged up and down the main hallway. Eventually, the party won and the heroic actions of the barbarian were praised for many more sessions to come. The encounter was, well, you could say, memorable. The two examples I just given you so far have also one thing in common. They were both in large open areas, which brings me to the next section. Space. I'm just going to be straight with you. I think fighting in a single grid square hallway is boring and should be prevented as much as possible. You can't maneuver, everybody gets into each other's way, and the spellcasters can use most of their cool AoE abilities. The same counts for the enemies you're running, and in the end this most often becomes a long, bogged down, slow encounter that will most likely frustrate the party more than provide any good memories. Now, this doesn't mean that you should never do it, but I'd like to urge you to be very careful with it and only use it when there's a solid reason to do so. Otherwise, try and use open spaces or hallways that are at least 2 grid squares wide. With that, I don't mean that you should make sure that the wizard can always cast his fireball and has plenty of space to avoid hitting fellow party members. An open space can be many things and doesn't always have to be a giant hall or open field. Fighting in a 5x5 grid square room works perfectly fine, and fighting in a smaller space like that can be really intense. It also brings forth the value of small area of effect spells, and there is sufficient space for melee characters to move around for flanking advantage or to reach the enemy casters that are tucked away in the back. Now, those are basically the 3 things that you should keep in mind when you're making a battle map. Now that our battle map is finished, there's just one more thing to do, and that is putting in the actual enemies and hazards. I'll try to keep this section short and to the point. Enemy variety is key in an encounter and makes it so much better. For example, your party is fighting a group of 6 orcs. The base orc in the monster manual, as you can see right here, has a great axe and some javelins. That means that he has actually both a ranged and melee option, which is more than some monsters have in the monster manual. 6 orcs with the same stats and with very limited ranged abilities won't really give a memorable fight. Most likely all orcs will try to get in melee range, and if the squishy party members stay at the back, they should mostly be fine. It is actually very easy to change this straightforward encounter into something more challenging, and let me walk you through it. We changed 2 of our orcs into crossbow wielding badasses. The 80 feet range of a light crossbow is sufficient to stay away from the melee party members and give the orcs a chance to attack the casters that are at the back. That's already better, but let's do something more. We buff one of our orcs a bit, give him 23 HP and +1 to its AC. He'll be the leader of that group, the big badass main grunt. You can describe him as being more muscled and tough, or maybe he has a different piece of armor. That should convey the different stat he has as well. Now we have 1 larger enemy that can tank an additional hit and draw fire from the party, 2 ranged attackers and 3 regular or grunts. You can still give one of the grunts a weapon with the reach property, for example, like a polearm. That way he can poke at the paladin without having to get in his combat range. The orcs have now so much more options to threaten the player and all of a sudden have a reason to apply battlefield tactics. This will make your combat as a DM much more fun to run as well. Alright, we have some enemies now, but there's one more thing that we can do. Traps. Traps are often used in dungeon crawls and outside of combat encounters, but a good old-fashioned spike pit can really mess with your players during an encounter as well. If you're in a hurry because you're drawing a quick and dirty battle map for a random encounter and the trap doesn't fit in well, that's no problem, you can leave it out. However, it is something that is easily forgotten and can be a really fun gimmick in a fight. So, for example, when you have a group of goblins that have prepared an ambush for the party, it makes sense to just add in a falling pit, maybe at the center of the road. Something to, well, spice things up. Alright folks, that was it for now. I hope this will help new DMs and map makers to spice up their maps and combat encounters. If you've enjoyed the video, please hit the like, favorite or subscribe button to stay up to date of my content. And also don't forget to hit the notification bell to get an alert every time a new video goes live. I've been working on some map making series as well, where I try and explain all the tips and tricks I know to help you make better battle maps in Dungeon Draft. Though some of the tips work well in other software too, I think, and I'll link to them in the description of this video. Well, thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you again in the next video.